In this recording, we're going to look at payroll as well as payroll taxes and how those expenses also create liabilities. So here's a little demonstration problem we'll use. Exercise 5. During the month of March, the company's employees earned wages of $64,000. Let's go down and kind of track that in our notes. So what we're reading is that total wages are $64,000. Withholdings related to these wages. So if you've ever worked somewhere, you know you don't get your full amount of salary or wage. The employer withholds money, usually taxes, and then will submit that money for the employee over to the government, whether it's state or federal government. So withholdings were for Social Security, which also is called FICA. So we have Social Security or FICA withholdings. So Social Security withholdings. That was $4,896. So that's going to decrease the amount we write our check for the employee. Also, we withheld federal income tax. So let's just kind of abbreviate that. Federal tax withholding. Whoop, misspelled there. So the withholding for federal taxes. Squeeze that in, $7,500. So we've done the FICA, the federal income tax. There was $3,100 for state. So we have federal tax withholding, and then we have at the state level, I'm just going to put WH for withholding. So state tax withholding, that is $3,100. And again, as the employer, we will hold that back for our employees. Then also it looks like we have unions, and we're going to withhold those dues and we'll turn it over to the union. So union dues of $400. So the net wage, or the amount we're going to write our check for, $64,000 minus all four of those items, is $48,104. And that's really, and again that's a 4, that's how much we're actually going to write our check for to the employees. But first we'll record it as a liability and then we'll make payment to the employee. So let's go to the next page and look at the journal entry. So as we turn a page, I've already got it over here. The total salary and wage expense, remember expenses reduce retained earnings, that's why they are debits. That was the $64,000. And then all of these payables, right? All of those are liabilities going up, and that's why the rest of these are going to be credits, are going to be these amounts. We're going to have a payable for Social Security taxes, payable for federal taxes, payable for state taxes, and the amount we owe to the union for dues for the employees. So I'm just going to credit over here $48.96, $7,500. State income tax was $3,100, union dues were $400, and the net amount that we're going to pay our employees eventually is $48,104. And eventually we will, I'm going to put it in green here, we will write a check eventually, that's supposed to be $1, to our employees for that. So that is payroll, so recording payroll, and then the withholdings for the employees. The second thing we want to look at in terms of payroll are payroll taxes that the employer bears. The responsibility of the employer, the cost for the employer. So we've looked at A for the employer, let's look at B, we looked at A for the employee, now let's look at B for the employer. For the employer, there are a couple of different taxes. One is this Social Security tax. We, as an employer, you have to match that. So not only does the employee responsible for FICA taxes, but the employer as well. So the employer is going to match the Social Security or FICA, so also $48.96. And then a unique tax that only the employer bears is state unemployment. So there are two payroll taxes for the employer. FICA, which is also called Social Security tax, and state unemployment tax, which was $700. So the employee bears these tax costs, right? It's just that the employer withholds those and turns them over to the various entities for the employee. Then the employer has its own the employer also has its own employment taxes or payroll taxes. And those in this case are totaling $5,596. So we're going to have a journal entry on the next page for these two payroll taxes. So let's go look at that. Well, we said the total expense is $5,596. And so recall, expenses cause retained earnings to go down. That's why it's a debit. And then we owe for FICA or Social Security $48.96, just like we did up here with the employee. And then state with $700. So again, the difference notice we have two expenses then, one for salary and wages, and now we see for payroll tax. Okay, and that covers the whole concept of payroll and payroll tax liabilities.